Hello, bonjour, and welcome everyone. My name is Katie Gray, and I am the project manager here at the World Trade Center Winnipeg. I would like to begin today by respectfully acknowledging that this webinar is coming to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji, Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. So thank you all for joining our Grow Your Business with Strategic Market Research webinar, which will be presented by Matilda van Aggelen. So I'll just share a bit of housekeeping information. Please send all of your webinar questions directly to the chat box, which is located at the top of your screen. And the panelists will try to, and Matilda will try to answer as many questions as she can during a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. If you have any logistical questions, you can also send them to the chat box, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And as a reminder, you will be receiving a PDF copy of the slides along with a recording within 1 week's time. So now it is time to start our webinar. I would like to introduce you to Matilda van Aggelen. Matilda has 4 years of experience in business development, customer service, and training. She holds a project management diploma and a management certificate from the University of Winnipeg Professional, Applied, and Continuing Education. So welcome, Matilda.
Thank you, Katie, for the introduction, and welcome to everyone who's on the call today. Thank you so much for joining us. So what we will be covering today is what is market research? How will market research help you grow your business? When will you be conducting market research? What types of information will you be looking for? And where can you find this information? And of course, who can assist you with your research? First things first, what is market research? I borrowed this beautiful definition from BDC. As a side note, BDC has an amazing library of resources that I highly encourage you to check out. So market research is the process of gathering and analyzing information about customers, competitors, and emerging trends that will help you make strategic planning decisions about marketing and selling your products and services. Largely speaking, there are two kinds of market research, primary and secondary. Our focus at the World Trade Center is secondary market research, so that will be the focus of today's presentation as well. But just to give you a quick overview, primary market research is collecting information directly from people in your target market. And that can take different forms. It could be interviews, focus groups, surveys. And as a business owner or entrepreneur, you're all gathering some primary market research in your everyday just by talking to your customers, engaging with them on social media, or talking to them at trade shows, etc. But secondary market research, our focus is collecting published information on your target market that is already publicly available. And we will go through some examples of the main types of information that you'll be looking for and how to find that. And of course, our team at the World Trade Center Winnipeg is also available to help you out with this. And I'll give you some examples on what that might look like throughout the presentation. Now, how will market research help your business grow? Market research will help you to understand your clients. Who are they? What do they need? And where can you find them? Similarly, it helps you understand your competitors. Who are they? What are their markets? And what are their strengths and weaknesses? It also helps you to monitor trends in your industry. What is happening in your industry and how might that affect your business? So these types of information together will help you identify opportunities. For example, what are some client needs that are maybe not sufficiently met by the competition? And how can you set yourself apart from the competition to meet that need? It also helps you to mitigate risk. What are the potential challenges coming up for your business? How can you anticipate those challenges and address them? Because a risk you're aware of then becomes a risk you can manage. When you have all of this information, you'll be able to evaluate your expansion plans. To what extent does the data actually support your choice for a certain market? Or if you're considering multiple markets, this information will give you a framework to compare your markets. When will you be conducting your market research? Of course, while you're evaluating your expansion plans, but really market research is an ongoing process. As you're carrying out your expansion plans, and even as you're growing your business further down the road and looking at new markets, you always want to keep your finger on the pulse of your industry, your clients or customers, and your competition. And what types of information does this actually entail, and where can you go searching for it? As noted in the definition that we started the presentation with, the three main categories of market information are customers, competitors, and trends. In the next few slides, I'll go through these categories and give you some examples of where to find this. When you're looking to understand your customers, you'll be answering the following questions. Who has a need for your product or service? Are there things that they have in common? If you're selling to consumers, this could be demographic characteristics like age or income. Or if you're selling to businesses, an example can be the size of companies you're targeting, the age of the businesses, or the industry that they're in. What do they want and need? What challenges are your customers looking to solve? Where do they purchase similar products or services? If you are selling a product, you will want to know, for example, do your clients purchase this type of product online or at brick and mortar stores? Do they use a third-party delivery service? Or if you are selling services, do clients prefer to book online? Where do they purchase as well? How often do they purchase a service? Or do they prefer to buy a product in smaller quantities or in bulk? Now, not all this information may be readily available from secondary sources, and our team at the World Trade Center Winnipeg might be able to help you fill some of these gaps with the help of our third-party databases. There will be more about that later. When you're looking to understand your customers and you're selling to business customers, I recommend that you get started with industry associations, government departments, trade publications. Associations and government departments will often have member surveys or business surveys or reports on the state of an industry. And trade publications are websites, they're often online publications, websites that specifically target a certain industry and that will publish articles that are relevant to that industry. They might also have good articles on consumer behavior or some issues that businesses are grappling with in the industry. Statistics Canada is a great resource, has a wealth of data both on the consumer side and the business side. There's a lot of demographic data, for example, from the Census of Population. I'll show some examples of that later on. And there are also many surveys of businesses available on Statistics Canada. I also recommend having a look at companies that offer consulting services. For example, PwC or Deloitte. They have really interesting industry reports and consumer surveys. Same thing goes for nonprofit organizations. For example, organizations that serve businesses, such as economic development agencies or chambers of commerce, or organizations that serve individuals, such as newcomer serving organizations. They might have very interesting surveys or statistics or reports available as well. And of course, there's the media, traditional media and social media. You will find a lot of information in articles and conversations that are going on social media. I'm going to start with an example for business clients. Statistics Canada does a very interesting survey that I use quite regularly. 4 times a year, they conduct this survey among their active businesses in the business register that Statistics Canada maintains. And to me, this is a great example of information that can help you better understand your business clients. I have highlighted here a few examples of some recent tables that came out of the last survey for the fourth quarter of 2022 that will give you information on obstacles that businesses will be facing or expect to face within the next 3 months, technologies they're looking to adopt in the next year, and whether or not their workforce is expected to be mostly remote or on-site. I just wanted to give you an example of what one of those tables might look like. So this is the table Challenges Faced When Adopting or Incorporating Technologies. And as you can see from the phrase highlighted in yellow here, this table is specifically about finding suitable hardware or software vendors. So if I was a technology business, I would definitely want to have a look at this. And this table also includes other specific challenges. And you can go deeper into the data by clicking on the button that says Add Remove Data. I would always recommend, if you're looking at a StatsCan table, to click that button and to see what other filters you might be able to apply. For example, in this particular table, you can filter by industry, following the North American Industry Classification System, or you can look at the results by province or by business characteristics, by ownership type. So you can really use a table like this to zoom in on the types of businesses that experience a particular challenge that you can address. Building on that example of a technology business, let's say you looked at that previous table and you noticed SMEs are really struggling with a specific challenge, and they really indicate that this is an obstacle for them. Here's an example of a report that dives deeper into that topic. The Brookfield Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship published this report on digital maturity in Canadian SMEs. And this is just a screen grab of some of the main findings of the report. If you look at it, you can get a lot of extra information on specific challenges for SMEs in Canada. So that's an example of how you can put different resources together to learn more about your target clients. And if we're changing lanes for a moment to look at the consumer side, here's an example of a great industry publication, Canadian Grocer. They gather a lot of research. They publish their own articles, but they also keep an eye out for other surveys and reports that are published by third parties, and they will highlight the key points. So if you're a food manufacturer or you manufacture consumer products, this is a great place to start and look at some research. And even if you're not finding exactly the answers to the questions you have, you might find some great starting points for other resources that may help you along the way. So if you're looking to understand your target customers, it can be very helpful to create a customer persona. And again, I went to BDC, which is my go-to source for good definitions. Personas are portraits of ideal customers that many businesses use to better target their marketing efforts. You create them by making imaginary characters that represent customer types you are trying to attract and retain. There's a lot of information that can go into a persona. This can be a really fun and creative exercise. And some examples for a customer persona could be age, gender, location, income, education, all of these demographic characteristics, but also things like hobbies and interests, their habits, and what motivates them. And similarly, if you're working with business clients, you can create a buyer persona for the types of people in the organizations that might be purchasing your product or service. And some of this information can be quite difficult to find, but our team at the World Trade Center Winnipeg has access to some private databases that can help you source some additional information for this. For example, we have access to information from a consumer survey that's conducted twice a year in Canada. And that might give you some good information on buying habits and these demographic characteristics. Now, customer persona will set you up really well for the next parts of your research, which is finding your target customers. When you're looking to find your target customers, now that you understand them, you'll be asking yourself, how many potential customers are there in my market, and where are they located? You can find the answers to these questions in some of the same resources as I already highlighted. For now, in this section, I really want to highlight chambers of commerce. If you are working with business clients, chambers of commerce often have really good directories and member lists organized by industry. If you're working with consumers, selling to consumers, you can find a lot of this information through Statistics Canada, especially the census data, which I'll show an example in just a few slides. If you're working with business clients, I'll show an example of Statistics Canada table that I use quite frequently, Canadian business counts. This table is updated twice a year. It uses the same business registry that the survey I showed you earlier was also based on. And it will show you how many businesses there are within a certain industry within Canada or by province. And as you can see here from this example, it goes down to the 6-digit level NAICS code, the North American Industry Classification. And that is pretty detailed, pretty granular information. You can get quite specific. So let's say in this example, if you are a manufacturer of children's clothing and you sell to how many stores there are of that category within each province. I also want to show an example of a directory maintained by an association. This is the member listing maintained by Biotech Canada, Association for the Biotechnology Industry. And you will find that a lot of associations have directories and member listings on their websites, whether they're provincial or national associations. I find this a good place to start if you're researching businesses that are a bit harder to categorize under the NAICS industry classification, or if you're targeting multiple industries. And of course, you need to keep in mind that not all businesses are members of an association, but it's definitely a good starting point. Looking at the consumer side, you will find great information through the census data on Statistics Canada. And as you likely know, the census is updated every 5 years, and we now have pretty recent data from the 2021 census, which is very helpful. And this provides statistics in many demographic categories, such as age, gender, income, immigration status, language, etc. And if you created a customer persona, this is a great way to build on that. As an example, let's say you are producing ready-to-eat meals, you've created your persona, and let's say your persona is a 28-year-old young professional who lives alone. You can use this table to look at how many people live alone within this age category between 25 and 34 years. And you can go and compare that by province. And besides these statistics, the census can also provide you with data that you may not immediately think of. For example, building on that housing category, how many people live in a house versus an apartment? How many people live in multi-generational households? Or in the example shown here, modes of commuting. And I like to bike or walk to work. So I have a reversible backpack that can turn into a shoulder bag or a briefcase. So I imagine that I might be the persona of an ideal client for someone who manufactures these types of products. So they might want to go and look at other cities in Canada and see how many people are there, like Matilda, who like to walk and bike to work. So that was a large category of information to understand and find our target customers. And once you have a good grasp on that, you also, of course, want to understand your competitors. So you'll want to know which types of businesses are already providing your product or service, how do they sell, and what are their strengths and challenges. You can find this information in industry reports, surveys, studies conducted by associations or governments. It's also a good idea to follow national or regional trade publications. And often with news websites or trade publications, you can set up notifications if a certain search term comes up in an article. So I would definitely recommend that you do that for your industry or for any competitors that you know of. And I also want to highlight company websites of your competitors. If you're looking at their website and looking at their offerings, what would you say are their strengths and weaknesses? And this can go beyond just the product or the service that they offer. For example, are there any options for customization? Or if the website has an online store, how would you evaluate the user friendliness or the features? Review platforms like Google and Yelp will also give you very useful information. Think of Google reviews or reviews on social media. What are the people purchasing services and products from competitors saying about this? Is there anything they are missing? Is there anything they are dissatisfied with? Here's an example of a report created by PwC Canada. And they created this beautiful resource, that helps to understand the ecosystem of emerging companies in digital health and the challenges, the opportunities that they are addressing. So in my experience, these types of reports from businesses offering consulting services are really interesting, especially when it comes to sectors that kind of sit at the intersection of two industries like digital health, healthcare, and technology. And that may not neatly fit in an NAICS code. I also highly recommend looking at industry or professional associations in your target markets. For example, if you're a tech company and you're looking to expand to BC, the BC Tech Association would give you a wealth of information, such as an ecosystem map, research reports, member surveys. And now that you've gathered all that information on your competitors, where can you find them? So the questions you will ask yourself are fairly similar to the ones you ask when you're finding your customers. However, you also want to look at market share here. And this information can be a bit difficult to source. It may sometimes be available in a report or in a news article, but often it isn't. And depending on your industry, our team at the World Trade Center Winnipeg might be able to help. So we have access to industry reports on a Canadian level that can identify the main players in your industry. You will also find competitors through industry directories and member lists of associations. That's pretty similar to what I showed you in the previous section about finding customers. But one thing I want to highlight here is exhibitor lists. If there are any trade shows in your markets that are coming up, go onto the website and see if the exhibitor list is available, because these are businesses that are targeting that market. And similarly, you can also look at the keynote speakers or the sponsors of the event, or you can go to the event organizer's social media or LinkedIn page and see what kind of businesses are interacting with their posts. Here's an example of a resource created by a government department. the agricultural processing industry directory from the government of Alberta, which lists businesses by products and characteristics. So let's say you are a manufacturer of gluten-free baked goods. You would definitely want to have a look at these categories, especially the ones that overlap. And I find that, especially in the food and beverage industry, you will find very detailed, very extensive directories on the websites of government departments. And I want to take this opportunity to just give a general search tip that has served me very well. If you're looking for a specific directory, and let's say you're using Google and you're typing in, for example, food product directory, but you're looking for resources that are reliable, credible, that were maybe published by government, then what I would do is after the search term, I would type in the extension for the government. So example for Manitoba, that would be .gov.nb.ca, or for the national level, that would be .gc.ca. And in my experience, this can be a shortcut to the information you need. Now, if you're pinpointing a specific city or metropolitan area, I'd say have a look at the chambers of commerce in those areas, because they will often have great business directories classified by industry, such as this one by the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce. If you're selling consumer products, it can be very useful to look at shopping guides and blogs, etc. Shop Local Canada is a really good resource for specific consumer products, anything that's handmade, premium, or generally, I would say, giftable. You can also find local shopping directories on the websites of chambers of commerce or economic development agencies. And especially around the holidays, you'll find lots of them, or this time of year, maybe around Valentine's Day. That brings us to the last big part of market research, our industry and consumer trends. Where is your industry headed? And of course, this is a very broad section. There are lots of questions to ask and to answer. For example, how is the demand for your product or service evolving? Which sectors of your industry are growing? Which changes are impacting your industry and your target customers? There could be many, many changes in this category. For example, technology, laws and regulations, demographic changes, or shifts in consumer behavior. And you can find reports and articles that speak to industry trends and consumer trends through a lot of different resources, but also look beyond written resources, because a lot of organizations will offer webinars or podcasts that dive deeper into certain trends. And here I also want to highlight trade shows and conferences. If there's a trade show or conference in your industry that has taken part in your target markets, go have a look at the website and see if there's any information available, such as a recording of a session or a summary report or an infographic. You might find some good information there too. Just wanted to show you an example of a webinar by Farm Credit Canada. So this is a webinar devoted to the changes in trends in the food and beverage industry. So this is a good example of a webinar, and especially webinars around lunchtime, like the one you're in, can give you a lot of information in a pretty short amount of time, and very nice if you're an auditory learner. I also often look at companies that offer consulting services, especially for consumer reports. And these reports can be industry specific, like this example from Deloitte Canada on the cannabis consumers. And this is just a highlight of the introductory paragraph, but this report contains very interesting detailed insights on cannabis consumer behaviors. Or these resources can be broader, like this example from PwC Canada. This investigates the habits of Canadian shoppers. And you can see there's an interactive component to this one as well, where you can go into the checkbox behind all ages, and you can choose your age range from the drop-down menu to get some more granular information. And of course, this was a lot of information. There's a lot you'll be looking for, a lot of questions you'll be asking. But if you have a business, you're busy. So who can assist you with all of this? Within our team at the World Trade Center Winnipeg, that would be our advisors, Eric Chaput, Business Information Officer, and Paul Keefe, Business Advisor. When you submit a research request on our website, this will land on Eric and Paul's desk. And what can we provide? In terms of market information, we can provide industry reports and statistics on the state of your industry in Canada, and we'd be looking at the closest NAICS industry classification code. And this would give you general information on industry performance, key players, trends affecting your industry. You can also look at demographic statistics. We have access to some very interesting demographic data, and we can create custom demographic reports for you for a custom market, or you can even compare multiple markets, or we could even choose a point on the map and select a driving time radius around that point. Can also help out with company lists of potential competitors or clients in a certain industry. If you're interested in this, I recommend that you fill out the market research form and then just have a chat with one of our advisors, let them know exactly what you're looking for, and then they can let you know what filters we can apply and how many results we could provide. We also have access to some e-commerce insights, information on consumer behavior when shopping online, and this pertains to Canada as a whole, and some major players by product category. Of course, if you're expanding beyond Manitoba, there's more to consider than just your market information. We can also direct you towards resources or refer you to organizations that can help with distribution channels, how to get the product to market, what permits and regulations to be aware of, or any specific questions on taxation or legal issues. And how does this work? This is a screenshot of our market research request form on our website. You fill out the form, there's more information underneath. And then our advisors will get back to you within 48 hours to discuss your request. And generally, if you're a business based in Manitoba, you can request one free market research package per fiscal year, and this covers about 2 hours of work. So if you have a project on the go and you're ready to dive into the research, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for joining me for this presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Matilda. That was a really wonderful and informative presentation. So I do welcome anyone, any of our participants to throw any of your questions you have for Matilda in the chat box. But in the meantime, I do have a question.
Okay.
Where would I be able to find a relevant trade show for my business?
Oh, I like that question. Yes. So there are different places that you can go. If there's an industry association for your industry, I would recommend that you start there, because they're really well aware. They have their finger on the pulse of what's happening. They might even have an events section on their website. Trade publications will also often have an events section on their website that will list all events that are happening. You could also reach out to the World Trade Center Winnipeg, really. So that's also something we can help you with.
Great. Thank you, Matilda. I have another question from Paul. What would you say are the most common mistakes business owners make when doing their market research, and how can they avoid them?
Oh, I love that question. Well, I'd say a common mistake and a really tricky one, right, is confirmation bias. If you're really excited about an idea, and of course your business is your your baby and you get excited. It's really important to look at what the data tells you. And if the data tells you that maybe there isn't really a need, or the need is already being fulfilled by the competitors, or there might be a more pressing need in another market, then it's important to listen to that.
That's a really great point. Thank you. And thank you for your question, Paul. I have another question. How can I be sure that a source is reliable?
Very important. I'd say look at a few different things. First of all, where did you find the source? If it's on the website of a government or an association or another credible mainstream source, that's a good indicator. Look at the author, look at their credentials. Who are they? How did they gather their knowledge or their expertise? And also look at when the source was published. If you have something that looks like a really great source, but it was published 5 years ago, you might want to go and find something a bit more recent.
Great, thank you. I have another question as well. What can I do if there are no public company directories for my sector?
Yes, that happens sometimes. So in that case, I recommend that you reach out to our team at the World Trade Center Winnipeg, because we have access to some third-party resources that might be able to pull some more specific data. This can be based on industry filters, but there are also some other filters that we can work with. And yes, I'd say just reach out and we'll discuss what's possible.
Thank you. I have a question from Dennis. If I need to reach out to a specific professional sector as a part of my market research, such as psychologists, for example, where do you suggest I go besides professional associations?
Look at any certifying bodies. So anything that's any organization that is responsible for professional credentials, or any directories that may help you find. I'm sorry, Katie, was it psychologists?
As an example, yes.
Okay, for example, Psychology Today, I happen to know has a good directory to find psychologists that are registered.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your question, Dennis. I have another question from Paul. If I can't find much data on my industry from my secondary market research, does that mean I might be pursuing the wrong business venture?
Not necessarily, because it might be that your industry is an emerging industry and there isn't a lot of information out there yet. It also depends on how well your industry aligns with a NAICS code, because as we saw, those industry classification codes are the standard classifications that are used for a lot of reports and a lot of statistics. And if you happen to be in an industry that doesn't neatly overlap with one of those codes, there might just be less information available.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Paul. So this brings us to the end of our questions. I also noticed that Paul, our business advisor, did put in the chat a link to the secondary market research request form. So if you are interested in any market research from the World Trade Center, please check that out. And also a link to our business information request form. So if you're looking for any business advice or guidance, that's where you would go. And I am now just putting our calendar of events into the chat. So we have some really great events coming up. We have the CRA on here with us on January 25th from 9 a.m. till 11 a.m. offering tax help for small businesses. So we'll have liaison officers here. So it'll be a really informative webinar, and it is free to join. And on the 7th of February, we will be beginning our business planning program. Our business planning program is a 7-week program that allows you to really develop and have all the tools to be able to establish and create a very sound business plan. The cost is $200, but it is a really great deal considering how much information you will be receiving. And on the 8th of February, we will have a Manitoba Finance here with an overview of retail sales tax. And we also have plenty other events coming up, so please check out our calendar of events. So thank you so much, Matilda, and thank you very much, everyone, for your participation and questions. I really appreciate it.